tēnā. Genevieve.
Kia hora te Marino, kia whakapapa kunamu te moana. Hei, huarahi mā toto I te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai, tatu I a tatu katoa. Ue taike.
Korere, karona, ka noho mai te kiwi, e po he waitakitaki no pi no whakahuria mai. Kei anda whetu, kei anda marama ko titi au e. E re rā I roka te peka tu tōroro wiwi wawa eke. Ke manu ki a tau ti hei Māori ora. A tēnā ra koto na po waitako tō tātou matua tipuna. E mihi atu o ka rakatira o te kaunihira taio ki Waitaha. E mihi atu. Ko tēnei mihi o te ahihahi o tēnei rā. E mihi atu ka me nui ki te mihi atu ki tō tātou matunui te raki. A koe te timataka me te whakautui ko tau katoa. Mo reira ka mihi au ki te kai homai o ka mea pai katoa. Ka mamahara mātou ki a rātou kaitua ko tō wairua. O reira I koutou rā, o ia marae, o ia iwi, I a waka. Haere ruke ki tāro te whānui a tānei ko tuatarai. Haere, e haere atu rā. E ka hoki nā mamahara tia. Mō tō māma o te koro matua o te kaunihira o Puranui, mō tō Maori Black, o tō māma. O reira, e whaia, e kaumātua, e tō māma e haere atu rā ki te pāto whakawairua, e takoto. Takoto I rangi Māori, I rongi tō waka, koi atu tō waka, ko tō tarai haere, e haere atu rā. E no reira, e mihi atu ki a koe o te tiamana, o te kaunihira taio ki Waitaha, mō te tūmaki, Stephanie, koutou rā, o te kaimahi tautoko e mihi atu. Kia koe o te mana whenua, o te pātawhi tō te kohaka kai o waro, o marumaru a moka tere, moka whakaruru hau, o nai tū a huriri. Ko reira e koutou rā, mauria mai e whakako ki te kaupapa nui, o tēnei rā, o te hui. Ko reira, koutou rā, tēnā koutou, e mihi atu kia koutou katoa. It was just an acknowledgement on my mihi about Maori Black's mum who passed away, and they had the tangi yesterday. I just wanted to acknowledge that. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Karakia. I wasn't aware that Maori had lost her mum, so having been out of the country for a wee while, so thank you for that. So welcome to the 561st Council meeting. We have a quorum, so I'm pleased to declare the meeting open, and we have started recording. So there is a change in the order of business to accommodate staff that may not get here till a little bit later, and I'm more than happy to wait for that if we need to have a small break. So there items 8.5 and 8.6 may need to be moved and replaced with 8.7. 8.5 and 8 may take an adjournment until 11:30. Not really comfortable about going into doing any other business. Want to leave public excluded till the end of the meeting, so the media in the room, and we have David here, the media in the room have an opportunity to listen to the meeting. Thank you. Apologies, do we have any apologies? I think we've got a full house actually, so thank you. Conflicts of interest, are there any conflicts of interest? Public forums and deputations, we do not have a public forum or a deputation today. Item 5, extraordinary and urgent business. And we have one thing that I would like to bring into extraordinary and urgent business and like to address that now. And I'd just like to hand over to Councillor Davies.
I withdraw and apologise.
So Councillor Davies withdraws and apologises, and just for context, for a comment that was made in the last council meeting during the deputation process. So thank you for that, Councillor Davies. That apology is acknowledged and will be recorded. Thank you. Are there any notices of motion? I don't believe there are. So we'll go to 7.1, which is the unconfirmed minutes of the meeting on the 19th of April 2023. And it's on page 6 of your agenda. So we're just looking for matters of accuracy. And we have recommendation there on the screen. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor East. You're sitting in the west, stop. And a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Pauling. They've been moved by Councillor East and seconded by Councillor Pauling. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that is carried. So moving to report items 8.1, which is the Chief Executive's report, and that's on page 164 of the agenda. So, Stephanie.
Kia ora tātou, thank you through you, Chair. I'll speak briefly to these items. We had multiple public fora in terms of 5 on the 19th of April. The Chair has responded by letter to each one of them. That is outlined here in my report. With regard to Davina Powell, she provided a presentation with regard to air quality and resource consenting, and we have noted that the desire for a significant number of stakeholder and community engagement workshops on the issue, which have already been undertaken. And I'm aware that Ms. Powell has regularly used those as a venue for engagement. The Chair also encouraged the immediate air quality concerns to be notified, and also the ability then to have this further conversation with you during the long-term plan process. If I move on to Mr. John Cottier from Te Hapu o Ngāti Wheki Rāpaki, this was in relation to the Mediterranean fanworm. Councillors will be aware that there is activity and collaboration with regard to that. Mr. Cottier received a response from the Chair on the 9th of May, and that indeed we are working with Ngāti Wheke and the Biosecurity New Zealand to understand the limit and the spread of the fanworm. And also that there'll be further work in developing this with regard to your long-term plan. And we've certainly invited a further submission. If I carry on then to Nick Stoneman from the South Shore Residents Association, he presented with regard to Route 60 of the bus service. Again, a letter from the Chair has gone on the 9th of May, and that indeed PT remains a priority of the Council. And we've outlined quite a lot of the work that you as councillors have mandated that we deliver. We did note the national driver shortage, and we also outlined issues with regard to the bus routes. We've offered, apologies, staff will discuss with our bus service operators their arrangements with regard to driver changes and notifications. So that is being actioned, and I do believe councillors sought that to happen as well. If I carry on then in terms of the 4th public forum by Denise George and Gay Maffin from South Shore and South Brighton community. This was with regard to their experience of bus services in South Shore and New Brighton. Again, the Chair sent a letter in return on the 9th of May, and again reinforced that PT is a priority for this council, that you have mandated a significant amount of funding towards it. We did recognize and do recognize that there are multiple factors impacting on our bus service delivery. We've tried to be explicit about those, and that includes the national driver shortage. And the Chair also outlined issues with regard to reconsidering when reviewing bus routes or services. I just note in response that staff again will discuss with our bus service operators their arrangements. So that's similar to the previous item, but obviously a just slightly different bus service and route, and we are doing that. Lastly, with regard to Nahuia Freed, her presentation and her experience of the public transport, the public bus system, again, a letter was sent from the Chair on the 9th of May, again, reinforcing our positions. I won't reiterate those, I'm repeating myself, but also just noting that we really encourage her to participate in the long-term plan process, and note some of her comments with regard to accessibility, family friendly, and the like. So we do take that on board. Chair, I'll leave my report at that, and I return the table to you.
Thank you. can we put that, we'll do the motion and then we'll have, see if there's any discussion. Or is there any clarification on any items? Vicky?
Sure, it's stuck here, but we say encourage immediate air quality concerns to be notified for resolution. This isn't in the formal statutory council context. We're meaning here, get in touch with the pollution hotline and that will get picked up and investigated in the normal way. Is that what that phrase is meaning?
Thank you, that Councillor Southworth. Yes, it is.
Okay, any further clarification of any issue in there? If not, could I have a mover? And thank you, Councillor Ward, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Swiggs. Any discussion? I thought it was quite a valuable opportunity for people to come before us and put those issues before us. I mean, it does take up some time, but it certainly is worthwhile to hear from people and their concerns. I'm just hopeful that the PT system is getting back to some sort of normal, and people won't be as frustrated as what they have been up to this point in time. No further discussion on this, then I'd like to put that item 8.1, Chief Executive's report. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say no. There is no, so that is carried. So thank you for that. So now we're moving to 8.2, which is the previous committee activities, and we have Catherine McMillan available if required to introduce this report. Councillor Edge, Chair of the Audit, Finance and Risk. Can you introduce this, Grant? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, this is. I'm just going to comment on three items within the minutes that we had on our 26th of April meeting. We go to page 171, item 8.2. We had presented with the annual report of the state of record keeping across New Zealand, and we also had a discussion about Environment Canterbury's record keeping as well within that context. And some of the issues covered, for example, were about document retrieval, document storage, document disposal, and what protocols are found across New Zealand in terms of part of that survey. Basically, we are tracking within the progressing and managing categories. So we're on a pathway to lift our game, and work is underway to design and implement procedures and processes to support that. And the importance of Māori data sovereignty will also be a key consideration as we move forward to improving on that documentation process. On that same page, item 8.3, third quarter performance reporting. There was mention made of the levels of service, 40 levels of service, about 72% on track, about 5 are at risk. Not sure, we will know next month how we're tracking again, but it's been a difficult year in terms of labour pressures and work program disruptions and volume of work itself, and the complexity of workloads that we've got. And of course, external matters related to climate, floods, government legislation. So there's a whole lot of different things that are impacting on our ability to maintain full level of service across all programs. And item 35, or level of service 35, again talked about consenting. And there's obviously issues on that as well, in trying to achieve the 80% priority consents and the numbers required for that. And we also identified some budget risks to do with things such as cruise ships and buses. But the report outlines risks associated with each of the portfolios. So that was a good update of where we're at, where we are. Next page, 8.6. We had a good discussion too with representatives from the Auditor General's Office, and their report, Integrity Framework, described a focus of supporting organisational integrity, enhancing the impact of Te Ao Māori, and building a reputation as a trusted source of information. So they're key things, messages that came out of that discussion with the people from there. And strengthening our core assurance role was something that they were working on from their end. And transparency of operational activity for the public good was another aspect that we touched on as well. So that was good to have that big discussion with people on that. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other points? Any points of clarification? Any points of inquiry of Councillor Edge? Any other comments? So, agenda item 8.2 is resolutions on the screen. Have a mover, please. Thank you, Councillor Robinson, and seconded by Councillor Edge. Any further discussion? No further discussion. So I'll put that to you. Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Edge. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, and that is carried. Thank you. So now moving to 8.3, which is previous committee activities. No, it's not. That's the resolution status report, which is on 175. And Catherine McMillan again is available. Maybe you should come forward, Catherine, and just speak briefly to it.
Tēnā koutou. This resolution status report is there to provide visibility of all the resolutions that have gone through council in their current status. I'm happy to take any questions or to help direct questions to the directors that may have queries for.
Thank you, Councillor Edge.
Thanks, Catherine. Just a query on page 183 regarding the progress on the notice of motions from former councillor Elizabeth McKenzie, and just wondered if we had any idea of when that could be progressed and completed and brought back to council.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Edge, for your query. The team have been undertaking quite a large analysis of the proposal around the possum traps, and that has included advice from Predator Free New Zealand. There have been two options that the team have been looking into. One is based on the notice of motion and the provision of a trap to every household. The other has been around a similar program to what we understand is occurring in Taranaki. So we expect that response to come to the next council meeting for you to consider.
Top of the morning to you. I hope you're well and everything's good. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions around page 184 of the agenda, which is around the resolution of public transport. The status is implementation delayed due to driver shortage. So the first question I had was, can we have an update of where the driver shortage is at and if we've got any numbers? And the other one is point number 4. Approves the removal of the airport terminal stop at Route 125 in the airport. I know there's been a bit of conversations around that, so I just wanted to understand if we had an update that we can talk publicly about.
So sorry, that's more than clarification. So are those direct questions that you would like to go to Transport, Councillor Swick?
We're in questions, aren't we?
Just we were seeking clarification of the issues, and you seem to be asking direct questions.
Yeah, there's a question of the report. I wanted to ask a question.
That's fine. Giles.
Through the chair, thanks for the question. In terms of driver shortages, The latest information I have is that we're currently short of around 10 drivers approximately. Just to provide more context to that, the current contingent from the training academy at the end of March is starting to get their licenses. By the start of June, we expect to actually be in positive balance, i.e. we will actually have spare drivers. What we're seeing is the impact of the recent wage uplift, which is clearly increasing local applicants as well as overseas, and clearly local applicants are much quicker to get into buses and onto the network. And so therefore that is shortening our ability to get up to back to a full complement. In relation to the work that's ongoing with the airport, we continue to work with the airport regarding the terminus availability, future service requirements, and how the 125 fits in. I don't have anything more at this point.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Swift?
I certainly am. Thank you, Chair.
I'm reading on my laptop here. I might have missed a page, but I can't see any reference to a resolution that I made about looking at health and safety procedures and structure. Doesn't appear to be on the schedule.
Sorry, Catherine.
My initial recollection was that went through Audit and Risk Committee rather than through Council. So it will be on the resolutions from Audit and Risk is my initial recollection, but I'm perfectly happy to check that out.
Are you happy with that, David? Thank you. Claire, did you have a question? Right, thank you, Catherine. So the resolution was there. Do I have a mover for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Swain, seconded by Councillor Mackay. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to the staff who have been working on this driver shortage issue, and I mean we've got this this status report and the resolutions here in our agenda here, and getting that information is really really cool actually, and it's a good news story. I think that's something that our staff can be proud of to work. The amount of work that's gone on, and we've had a number of briefings and everything like that. So I just wanted to sort of raise that because we're always being told that reliability of our service is really important. And I'm pleased to see that that's going to be improved with the driver shortages and the opening up of the country, obviously, and really good to hear that there's local applicants as well. I think that's actually a really, really good news story. So I'm quite pleased about this.
Councillor Crocker.
Kia ora. I just one thing to do with the driver shortage and also the training, and the fact is that one of the reasons is that you gave is that it is part of the reason is because of the wages, raising of the remuneration for drivers. Just one thing is that, and it seems to be a sort of a common point in some ways about bus users actually having difficulty sometimes actually, or the drivers having some difficulty understanding, the drivers, or vice versa. But with the three main languages, okay, sorry. So I'm just suggesting that maybe because the three official languages of New Zealand, English, Te Reo Māori, and also one of the things though, particularly around the special needs people, is actually sign language. And it's probably more the third one that we should actually think about them having a little bit of an idea around sign language, seeing the special needs people have actually, that was one of their points around communication with the driver and them. Thank you.
No, that's a good observation. I think we just take that forward into PT discussion. We have a couple of workshops on PT soon, and maybe we could note that. But I'd just like to mention we should note your comments, Councillor Swiggs, because I think the opportunity to have some good news around PT is should be taken, and I think that I would mind daylighting that in the minutes if we could. So thank you. Okay, so there's the recommendation moved by Councillor Swiggs, seconded by Councillor Mackay. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, and that's carried. 8.4 is on page 185. The agenda. And this is just an endorsement really of Catherine. So I think there's some amendments here, isn't there, Catherine?
Yes, this paper is about Local Government New Zealand conference, and under our expenses policy, then we're required to bring this to the council for approval. We've done an updated staff recommendation to include Councillor Karakia into the attendees to conference. So the first resolution, recommended resolution, is about attendance to the conference. The second one is to nominate Chair Peter Scott as our delegate at the AGM. So that would be, he would have the voting rights with that around it. I'm happy to take any questions. If you have any.
Any clarity restored over any of this? No, thank you, Catherine. Thank you. And I think that you've included Councillor Karakia in that. Yes. We don't have then 3 that we don't have a remit. Yeah, and number 5 just points out that we will see those remits before they're voted on, and it really is a consensus of the council rather than my opinion on those votes. So once we've done that and you've seen those, then we'll go through and see which way you want to go on that. So thank you. Moved by Councillor Mackay, seconded by Councillor Cranwell.
Note that Councillor Davies will be attending the YEM workshop beforehand, and I'll also be at the Timatanga one as well. Just in that case, I mean, I'll be at the Timata Watua Hui and the YEM Hui as well. I have blood and age on myself, maybe. I'll be at both of those Hui, and the noting of those Huis there. I'll be at both of those as well.
Thank you for that. Any further discussion on this issue? We will note Councillor Cranwell's addition about himself and Councillor Burns. And whatever he said, I don't know who to hear. Whatever you said. Okay, any further discussion on that? There's no further discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. Thank you. Spatial plan is going to wait. 8.5, 8.6, wait. We'll go to 8.7, which is the chair's report. Just to note the resolution change, our recommendation change.
Yes, we've done updated staff recommendation to remove the second recommended resolution. Councillor Ward has withdrawn his request for extended leave of absence. And as with any councillor, he is able to submit an apology for any meeting that he will be unable to attend.
Any further clarification sought from councillors on that? Okay, thank you. So we're just receiving the report. So will someone? I'll move that. Seconder. Thank you, Craig. All right, discussion on that. So it's an opportunity to give visibility to councillors and I guess the wider public on the issues that we have in front of us at the moment. I'm vitally interested in them because they are going to shape the way that Canterbury is going to get shaped into the future. Essential freshwater package, we have discussed that at length, but the implications of that in the legislation that we have in front of us at the moment will mean the possibility of a quite restrictive Canterbury in terms of some of the activities that are taking place, specifically the requirement for nitrate levels in surface water to be at 2.4, and the implication also that has for drinking water. The implications that the water and phosphorus are going to have, so that's going to look pretty clearly at what can and can't be done on more slopier land. Our inability possibly to change things with some of the tools that we have available to us, and the challenge that therefore we must put out to CRIs, universities and others in the agricultural sector to change the way we do things for better. And just pointing out that these aren't Canterbury issues, these are New Zealand issues, but they are the things that will get daylighted in the essential freshwater package. And under Te Mana o Te Wai, which we've had numerous discussions about that up to this point in time, it is important that the mana of each individual river across Canterbury, and 54 rivers, with each individual runanga responsible for those, will have to be looked at in our land and water plan, and the discussion on that with not only mana whenua, but also the communities that are involved in the use of those waters and the benefits from those waters. So it's a significant piece of work. The planning horizon for that is yet to be decided, and will be decided by consultation. I have my own view on that, which I'm going to hold. My view I'm going to hold to myself, but it is going to be a piece of work that this council will be heavily involved in the next, in the next 18 months to 2 years, and we need to have our plan registered by December 2024. So it will take up a significant amount of space for us. We're concentrating on that in the first instance with a regional policy statement, which will give us some coverage across land and also coastal, because our criticism, I guess, up till now is coastal has been neglected since 2000. I think was it 2000? Yeah, and our communities, our coastal communities, are really concerned about that. Mana whenua are really quite concerned about that, where they intersect with that. We know there's some degradation and inundation going on along the coastline. So there's a lot of stuff working in that space, and we know that there is no direct line where land and water use intersects with the coast. There's no direct line. They are interlinked. So I think it's a really good opportunity. Gives us another opportunity also, I think, and ahead of RMA reforms, which point strongly at regional spatial plans, and the basis for that is a regional policy statement, which I think if we can get on and do some real serious work on that, then we can get much more involvement across the community than what we would under the regional spatial planning model, which means that we would have a diminished role at the table in its pure form. TAs get one each. We would get one person at that table, and mana whenua maybe three. So it's our intention to try and do it the way that staff have planned. Any other discussion on that, or any other points that people would like to talk to about that? There's an opportunity to talk about it.
Peter, as a seconder, I'd like to speak to it after you've done your report. Push it back.
Okay, thank you. And I guess the other, in this space, I guess the other concern that we do have is that RMA reforms look like they'll go through in this term. Minister Parker has pointed to that. Therefore, the implication across Canterbury is where do we sit with that? How do we sit on that? We're very lucky to have a council that's held in an operating council that's held in really high regard by the ministries. They're looking for people to step off and go first. How I feel about that. I mean, the mayors are pretty keen on doing something, getting out in front of everything. But, from our point of view, resourcing is challenging now. And we know that from the work that we're trying to get on and do. And we know that if we, jumped in that bigger pond of RMA reform, first came off the rank, then that's going to be challenging also, although it may provide an opportunity also to better resource some of the things that we're doing. So anyway, I mean, from my point of view, that heading, there's a lot going on under that heading in my head, and a lot of good stuff, a lot of change stuff, and a lot of stuff that's going to be challenging. Great.
Kia ora, Peter. Kia ora, councillors. Kia ora, staff. First of all, Peter, I just want to thank you for having this chair's report. I think it's a really good opportunity to daylight some issues, especially for the public, that we're all working on. In terms of the integrated planning stuff, I mean, for me, it is the biggest piece of work that we have in front of us as a council. It is a reason why I stood for re-election again, one of the main reasons, because I really wanted to be here to help with this process, working through this with our Papatipi Runanga, but also our wider communities, to really lock in some outcomes for our natural environment. So I'm really keen, I'm really happy with where we've got to with that on sort of doing a RPS or regional policy statement in the next 12 months. I think that will get us to a really good place across different resources and across our environment. So yeah, really just want to acknowledge that and the work we're doing, that our staff are doing, that we as councils are doing, and with our Papatipi Runanga at the moment. And of course, as we go out to the community in the next 6 months on that, it's going to be a really important piece of work. So acknowledging that, like you said, around the RM reforms, of course, there's a massive amount of reforms going on at the moment. Also, if you add to that the local government reform, another big thing for us as a council to grapple with. And just to really make that point around the regional planning committees under the sort of reformed legislation, that I think that's the way that it's currently might be looking with sort of minimal involvement from the regional council, but it doesn't have to be like that. So I just think that's something that we just need to keep advocating for, working with our partners in the TLAs as well as within the Runanga, to really push for a better model for that going forward. So I think that's the challenge for us. And of course, you mentioned too that the Spatial Planning Act, we have a paper in our council papers today about we've front-footed that with the Greater Christchurch Partnership and our colleagues here in sort of Greater Christchurch. And I think that's a great piece of work that we're on the front foot for, and giving us insight into how that could look for all of Canterbury. The Climate Change Adaptation Act is something we don't know heaps about yet, and I suppose we're all waited with bated breath about where that might land and what that might mean for all of us as well, and how that gives some tools to help some of the issues that you mentioned around the coast. So that's another big thing that's happening that we're all is going to be big for us. The other one I'll mention is the Indigenous Biodiversity MPS that's sort of been in draft. Again, there's some key things in there for the regional council to move forward on, and so I'm looking forward to that in time. Don't know when, but looking forward to when that may land and the work that we will do around that. And lastly, there in your reports there about the freshwater farm plans, again, that's been something that is a challenge for us in Canterbury, with having our farm environmental plans already sort of locked into our system. And we've obviously been making government aware that that's something to consider with the work that's already happened here in Canterbury. So again, we're working through that with our communities and with government. And the annual plan, hey, again, acknowledging all of the community that did come and make representations to us about our latest annual plan. And of course, we're going to be deliberating on that in the next week and looking to finalise that. So starting to think about our long-term plan is something where we're at. So yeah, just acknowledging that. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to flag that in terms of the National Policy Statement for Freshwater and the Essential Freshwater Package, in conjunction with consenting issues around our interpretation of Te Mana o Te Wai and the Awa decision, is causing quite a lot of community concern. And that spills into community concern about their level of involvement and engagement in how ECAN is moving forward on the essential freshwater package and the discretions that ECAN may or may not be using in terms of its interpretation of the MPS of freshwater.
Thank you, Councillor McKay.
Thanks very much. Yeah, look, really appreciate the opportunity just to speak to this. And I guess my thinking may sort of build on a little bit from Councillor Mackenzie's here. There is, I think for a start, I just would like to acknowledge the work that has gone on, particularly in our rural areas with our rural landowners, in improving freshwater over the last 10 or 12 years and since we've had the Canterbury Land and Water Plan in, and certainly there's been a strengthening of the outcomes that we require over the time with various plan changes, and certainly the latest plan change and Plan Change 7. So I think I just want to acknowledge that God, I don't like using the word the journey, but the pathway that certainly our farmers have been on. But it's not only farmers; it's urban people as well, and urban industrial activities and other things. So we certainly are seeing some changes in practices, or improvements in practices to try and get the outcomes that we're seeking. But I do concur with Councillor Mackenzie. There is a lot of uncertainty about there and concerned about the engagement process or the pathway for having a say in actually what the future looks like for individuals. So I just want to put that on the table as well. And we're informed by our staff that we will undertake a true and faithful engagement and consultation process. So I will be sitting here as a councillor and make sure that actually happens. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKay. Anybody else? I had intended to go through these one at a time, but Craig, you sort of raced through them on me, so I just want to double back. And I failed to mention that the Adaptation Act, that's it's the third leg, I guess, is going to be very important to us. And I did have the opportunity to talk in Wellington with Minister Shaw about this, and have opened an invitation to him to come down here. It was at the mayor with the mayors in place, but I'm sure that we can spend some time on that because his knowledge on that area is pretty deep and interesting, and we need the opportunity, and he's more than happy to do that. So hopefully we can do that in the future. Freshwater farm plans, we're getting close now to gazettal at the end of this month, Stephanie, at the end of May, and pretty much the rules are the rules, and they'll be what they are, and no one seems no one that can talk about it anyway seem all that concerned about this, but you never know because we haven't seen them. I did take the opportunity again on Thursday with Minister Parker to point to the fact that if we could get some sort of a concession under the Order in Council about looking at how we assess risk rather than just chucking a blanket over a freshwater management unit and saying, oh, we need to treat that all the same, because I think that the indication that I have and that you would have all had from staff is that there's an opportunity here for us to actually go to risk, look at risk, and risk, although this is a moot point, risk doesn't really exist all that much in terms of our current land and water plan under anyone that's got a freshwater farm environment plan or even a farm management plan. That can change as the rules change, obviously, but there's an opportunity there that they've been audited through a process of auditing and all the rest of it. So I'm not saying that Minister Parker moved at all, but he did say, we're taking that on board, and was highly complimentary of this organisation and the part it has played in bringing freshwater farm plans to the fore, because essentially it's what Canterbury's been doing since farm environment plans started. Whether we can get a hook in the end there and just adjust it a little bit, I'm not sure, but I'm ever hopeful on behalf of staff who find it a bit easier. I think would find it a bit easier. progress on the annual plan. Of that opportunity, we went through the hearing process with those people that submitted to us, and that is always valuable to have people come in front of you and put their views to you. And we really have appreciated the opportunity to hear so many people. The conversations have given us an understanding of two things: what people thought of our annual plan, and this majority support for what we're trying to do, but also how we want to try and shape our long-term plan, which is a conversation, I guess, that's going to come around really, really quickly, actually. And I see you nodding down there, Catherine Trott. You look excited about that, although you're off to France, I understand, for escaping the place. All right, so that's pretty much my report. Is any other councillor wants to note anything in that light? They're not. Councillor Robinson.
Just referring back to the NPS delayed for biodiversity and Craig Pauling's, Councillor Pauling's comments. I just want to have some sort of direction on how we can progress while we wait. Just interim measures of potential targeted changes that would take effect quicker than waiting. And I would like, through you, Chair, some sort of small report on how we can proceed. Thank you.
I think that's a good point, Councillor Robinson. I had heard it. I was in the room when the minister said that they didn't think this would get through in this term. So how's that then held up if there's a change of government and a change of focus and those sorts of things? And so, and possibly for us to gain an understanding what that means. Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah. Okay. We'll note that. Thank you. All right. So the recommendation is there in front of you. I've moved that and a second by Councillor Pauling. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against? That is carried. Now, I see we've got some GCP people returning, Jess, but should we just take 10 minutes and you're expecting others? All right. Well, let's adjourn for 10 minutes and see where we're at 1:30. All right. We'll reconvene the meeting and the recording is started. So thank you. Thank you for rushing across from CCC to be with us, but we thought this was an important piece of work that needs our full attention and your full team. So Jess, I'll hand to you and maybe you can do the introductions and we'll take it from there.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just firstly, I'd like to acknowledge, got the Greater Christchurch Partnership team here working on both the spatial plan and the mass rapid transit indicative business case work. On my left, I've got Ben Rhodes from Harrison Grierson's our spatial plan lead. On my right, I've got Richard Osborne from Whakakatahi leading the MRT IBC work. And Arno Deutsch is part of the project team for the MRT IBC work. So here to answer questions on both of the papers in front of you. I've also got in the background, back row, sorry, I should say, Tracy Tierney, our Greater Christchurch Partnership Manager, and Nadia Grabner-Thornley from the Greater Christchurch Partnership as well. Just acknowledge Nadia's, this is Nadia's last big governance meeting with the partnership as she's heading on to a role at UNICEF at the end of the month. So again, just like to acknowledge this is a significant amount of work that's been happening over the last really 2 decades in Greater Christchurch in terms of spatial planning work that we've been doing with the original UDS and right through the earthquake recovery process and through recently the Outspace Future Development Strategy process and now into a revised or direction for Greater Christchurch through the spatial plan and MRT work that we've been undertaking. So I've got the team here, as I said, for questions. Firstly, with the spatial plan report, the purpose of the report for council is to endorse the draft Greater Christchurch spatial plan for the purposes of public consultation. You're also asked to approve the nomination of Councillor Edge as Environment Canterbury's representative on the hearing panel. Some key highlights just to note from the report. The draft spatial plan, which has been separately circulated as attachment B, was approved by the Whakamutunga Committee for the purposes of public consultation last Friday on the 12th of May. I also note that the Christchurch City Council, where the team's just come from, has also passed the resolutions in both papers today. So it's a good step forward. Partner councils are, as I say, now being asked to endorse the spatial plan ahead of public consultation, which is scheduled between mid-June and the end of July. The development of the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan was identified as the first priority of the Whakamutunga Committee following its establishment in 2022. This is a key strategic document which provides the partner agencies shared vision for the future of Greater Christchurch. It will be implemented through actions in a joint work program and through the other local and central government planning and investment processes. The purpose of the spatial plan is set out on page 189 of the report, broadly as being set a desired urban form for Greater Christchurch through to 2051 and beyond to a population of around 1 million people. It will also improve coordination and alignment between central and local government, mana whenua, and satisfy the requirements of the National Policy Statement on urban development to prepare a future development strategy. Development of the spatial plan has been informed by input from the community and stakeholders through the recent Hui Mai engagement. Let's come together to plan our future, this was held during February and March this year. Information about the engagement and findings is detailed in the Hui Mai Community Engagement Report, attachment E, which is separately circulated. The draft spatial plan seeks to reflect the values, priorities and expectations of mana whenua, including actively supporting kāinga and ahonga and protecting sites of significance. The draft plan is structured around 6 opportunities which link to a set of clear directions, 2 overarching directions and 5 key moves that are critical to the implementation of the proposed spatial strategy. These opportunities, directions and key moves are summarised in the table on page 194 of the papers. The draft spatial strategy map is shown on page 195, and this map seeks to visually represent the opportunities, directions and key moves set out in the draft spatial plan. So in terms of next steps through to consultation and hearings, subject to endorsement of the plan by governance, a special consultative procedure using the LGA process will follow, and this includes submissions and the hearing of submissions on the draft spatial plan. Cabinet endorsement of the draft plan will be sought midway through next month, with public consultation scheduled between mid-June and the end of July. Key elements of the public consultation are outlined in the papers on page 197. The hearings panel will consider and make recommendations on submissions received on the spatial plan through to the Whakamutunga Committee. The hearings panel will comprise an independent chair, 1 representative from each of the 4 partner councils, 1 representative on behalf of mana whenua, and 1 central government representative. Draw your attention to the list of recommendations on page 188 to 189 of your agenda. Range of resolutions there, noting the appointment of Councillor Edge to the hearings panel, receiving the housing and business capacity assessments and the Hui Mai engagement report, and noting the process from here on. So through you, Mr. Chair, happy to take any questions from council and have the team of experts here as well.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, look, I think I'll suspend our normal way of doing this, and we usually just go to questions of clarification, then to step back and have a discussion. But this is a reasonable sized document, one of the bigger ones that we've had, actually only probably threatened by the Future for Local Government documentation. So, and there's some pretty interesting stuff in here. And if you've been part of the GCP process, then I think it deserves some time just for a general discussion and some general comments and asking questions. So, councillors, do you want to lead off, Councillor Edge, in terms of your involvement with this? Any comment you'd like to make, and then Councillor Southwolf.
Thanks, Chair. Jesse's given a pretty good summary of what's been happening over many years, and the staff report that we have from page 188 explains things really, really well. So I'm kind of probably going to repeat things, but this process started way back with our partners, 2007 with the urban development strategy, and then we had an earthquake and had a recovery process in in Greater Christchurch. And of course, our space document, 2021, I think it was adopted and incorporated into Chapter 6 of our regional policy statement, and that was all about identification of urban growth areas. So this spatial plan and the document we've got today that we're looking at endorsement is kind of the further iteration of all of that. And it kind of ties together with national policy statements on urban development. There are a couple of new chapters in there which deal with housing capacity and business capacity requirements. Not a significant change for the housing from the 2016 capacity assessment, but there's more issues by the look of it around business and commercial requirements that will have to be considered in the future. And of course, this document in a way will be related to the Spatial Planning Act. That's part of the RMA changes that the government's bringing in fairly shortly. So that's good that we are ahead of the game, as Councillor Pauling suggested earlier. It's been an immensely collaborative process between all the partners, and that's Environment Canterbury teams, Christchurch City, Selwyn District Council, Waimakariri District Council, Whakamutunga, and of course Mana Whenua, who played a big role in shaping the requirements for Māori going forward. And of course the Urban Growth Partnership itself has now incorporated the Crown. And that's really big. That's we now become, I think, the 6th Urban Growth Partnership across New Zealand. And that's really important because it allows for government ministers, I think it's Minister Woods and Minister Wood, transport and local government are in the loop, and housing as well. So it's really important for us going forward in terms of how we develop things. And the report too is a product of not only the collaboration of people around the committee, but engagement processes as well. The first one we had was 2020 as part of the GC 2050 visioning process, and that received a lot of stakeholder engagement, visioning, and that covered the environment, the economy or economics and social issues, and they then contributed to where we are now. And they sort of set aside some aspirations, and which the committee and staff have incorporated the views of the people. And then earlier on this year, of course, the big Hui Mai engagement process, and that reinforced the aspirations of the public. And I was thinking too, both those GC 2050 engagement and Hui Mai are almost a repeat of the post-earthquake discussions and visioning that went on in the city as well. So there's consistency in what people want in terms of the environment, especially that they want a good environment, a good, healthy living environment where they're going to live. And in terms of on page 19, I think it is, of the report, it has a table 1 which highlights 6 opportunities, directions, and key moves. And they're kind of the foundation of the document and where we're heading. And it was remarked at our meeting on Friday by the government planner, I can't remember his name. Yeah, that we were a little bit unique in one of our key opportunities in terms of opportunity 3, which was to protect, restore, and enhance the natural environment with particular focus on Te Ao Māori, enhancement of biodiversity, and connectivity between the natural areas and accessible people. So it was kind of this element of blue-green infrastructure is considering as a way of greening our cities and connecting people. We have transport, but the blue-green stuff is potentially a way forward to meet carbon emissions and other mode transport shifts. For me, the report identifies constraints to urban growth as well. So it's not just about where we're headed, but it is doing that in a very scientific way. And so that's been really important too. Climate resilience, productive soils, that sort of thing. We basically ended up with an integrated shared vision for the future. And I want to thank all the staff who are involved with the project for delivering a pretty important package. But I also want to just extend a thanks to, as part of our own team, past Chair Jenny Huey and past Councillor Phil Clearwater, who are working on this for 3 years as well. And of course yourself, Chair Scott, and Councillor Southworth. But I think so from our perspective, and the staff too, and Stephanie and Jesse and Sam and Catherine, thank you very much for basically honouring the wishes of people in a way. So for me, I certainly endorse the project and the report going forward.
Councillor Edge, look, I was magnanimous in the fact that I've suspended normal debate, but apparently I'm not allowed to do that, actually. But we can run this. Sorry that I didn't get this done, Grant, but here we are. So I need a mover and a seconder for suspending standing orders, if you like. Thank you, Councillor Sung. Thank you, Councillor Edge. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, carried. Now, essentially what that does, so I thought I was very clear when I said I was going to suspend them, takes the time limit of speakers, questions to staff, questions of clarification. Members may only speak once under our standing orders. Limits on the number of seconds, seconder may reserve the right to speak and only speaking to relevant matters. Now, can I just say, we should only speak to relevant matters. I mean, that's the only thing that I would endorse. So that's what that does. So sorry about that, Grant, but we'll open up an opportunity for Councillor Southwood. Southworth, do you want to say something?
Yeah, Southworth. I've only been here 3.5 years with you, Peter, but that's all good. I want to hear from others because I have the opportunity to speak and listen throughout on our Greater Christchurch partnership, which I'm really enjoying being part of. Just to say, I feel like this draft plan, I'm really looking forward to the consultation. It's succinct. It really focuses in on the shift that's needed from the current model, which is just going to, basically sprawl, to how we're going to actually create all the potential the city has, and particularly thinking of the blue-green for me is fantastic. And looking at the mixed housing and how we can live as communities together through all the ages and stages. There's lots in here. It's fantastic, and I'm looking forward to it. But I'll let questions. Thanks.
Tēnā koutou, e mihi atu. When I first received this here and kind of wading through it, I kind of was trying to get into my head, so what's the whole end game for this? And then lo and behold, on Saturday morning, I pick up the Christchurch Press, and on the front page there's an article by Sinead Gill, which actually said what a city of 1 million could look like. And basically what that was about was reflected really from the great work that's being done with this. So I congratulate you. I think also when on Friday, and then the kore matua of Selwyn District Council kind of coined it in that it marked a time for Greater Christchurch to move beyond repair and rebuild, but into the future. And then what he did, what the reporter did too, is that she went into a scenario that moved to 2051. and the incredible statistics there that she actually quoted about the use of public transportation, about the benefits around the environment, about people's well-being, and then also based on the West and the North, and particularly using the central city, which was actually something that everyone was kind of asking, why do they have to go through the central city to get to either side? And kind of, when you read through this, it all kind of, it daylights it in a number of ways. I also want to acknowledge, thank you to the two councillors, our chair, those that are now not sitting at this table, but to acknowledge their work and the great work, because there's a lot of work I know in that. I think I acknowledge Councillor Edge, because the acknowledgement of mana whenua, and that is really talking about the Te Tiriti partnership, the way that we actually are, I felt in this thing, and it seems talking to Papatupu Runanga, particularly Nai Tuahuriri, around they felt valued actually in this kind of consultation and being part of this. So yeah, that's my observation of this. I acknowledge that the great work that's been done, but I think it's all kind of tied up in what a city of 1 million could look like. And I think what that particular article has actually nailed it, and that gives us a huge amount of enthusiasm. And now it goes to public consultation. It's always great to revert back to actually what the end game is going to look like in 2051. So, mihi atu, kia koutou, kia kaha, kia mai, kia ora.
Kia ora, and yeah, thanks for this Bible. That's a good word. I was going to say something slightly different, but no, that works. But one of the and Councillor Edge kind of touched on it, but the question I had was around the RMA changes that are going to most likely take place, and how this work is going to integrate into that. And one of the questions is, are we being strong enough in some of the directions that we've got in this, given the RMA and what this will turn into once those changes take place?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you, Councillor Swiggs, for your question. Yeah, certainly. Look, the RM reforms, as we just talked about earlier in the Chair's report, is expected towards the end of this year. There's a lot in the Spatial Planning Act that we'll need to dissect and take forward in terms of the regional spatial strategies that will be required to be developed. This work is a significant step forward, I feel, for the Greater Christchurch sub-regional area as part of that broader region. And there'll be a lot of lessons learned out of the process that we've just been through or still going through over the next 6 to 12 months and beyond, because there's a further work that comes out of the spatial plan and the joint work program things. And the key, I think, to all of this has been the partnership and how we've worked together. As our Chief Executive said earlier, this is a partnership where we come together to collaborate. It's not forced upon us. This is something that we do collectively to deliver for the Greater Christchurch sub-region, but this will be the stepping stone towards the regional spatial planning that we need to do. Yeah, I think the team internally here, we're starting to do some thinking around what that looks like, what are some of the gaps, where the spatial plan for Greater Christchurch might need to pivot and adjust a little bit to fit with the new legislative requirements that will be coming our way. So I think there's a fair bit of water to go under the bridge between now and when we start that work to understand what finally comes out of the RM reforms and where we need to go next. We're doing a huge amount of work through the RPS Integrated Planning Framework review of the RPS, and a lot of that will be the evidence base that we need to go forward as well. So I think we're in a really good space leading into that work to be done over the coming years, and we'll obviously be having some discussions about that through the LTP as well.
No, I'll just keep going. So I mean, in terms of the spatial plan, and I know the RPS and, you know, they drop down underneath this, but was there an opportunity within this to be a bit more prescriptive around, especially, you know, I want to pick on one issue. Well, you know, there's a lot of issues, but I'll pick on one specifically around where there's the conflict of where people grow or people live, where subdivisions grow, and the activities that happen on their borders. Now, this talks a lot around industrial use, but industrial use is not the only thing that happens on borders of people. I'm talking about in those rural spaces. You've got quarries, you've got other issues that cause health issues and things like that. And I don't really see a lot of prescriptiveness around that. There's a lot of stuff around, you know, heavy industry, other industry and things like that, but nothing really around that spatial planning, or that part of, what's the word I'm looking for, land use planning. So are we missing an opportunity in this to have that there? If not, how can we make sure that that does get some daylight?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, kia ora for the question. It is a more of a descriptive plan, I guess, first of all, it's quite high level. We have included some text and description in there around those particular issues in a couple of places, and in particular around the how we grow. There's an opportunity 4 we've included around what good greenfield might look like. We'll have to factor in and consider those boundary or reverse sensitivity issues as in terms of where we want to grow. That will be a key consideration. I'm sure Jesse can talk more to about how that might then play out into the RPS changes, which in any district plan will have to definitely factor those considerations in. But there's a starting point. It does direct that as a clear consideration for growing out.
Add to that, I think as far as being prescriptive, this is a significant shift from greenfield to intensification. I mean, that's one of the biggest shifts in the spatial planning process, and taking account of the MRT work as well, about building an integrated land use and transport system where we are seeing a compact urban form. We had, obviously rightly post-earthquake, we had a significant growth in the district council areas. Previously worked at Selwyn as a planning manager and dealt with a lot of that growth over the last 5 or 6 years. And that was as a result directly of the earthquakes. We had done the planning previously through the UDS, and then we did work through the land use recovery plan, etc. But this is a big shift of that greenfield growth that's occurred over that last decade, shifting that back into a compact urban form, intensification around our centres and along the corridors, and to enable the mass rapid transit, turn up and go public transport system that we'll talk about in the next paper. But that is a significant shift in direction within the spatial plan. So
I won't labour on that point. I think I just have a different view on some of the things that could have been in there. But anyway, one other question is, this is a massive document. It's gone over for many, many years. And I know we've had Hui Mai, which is like a pre-engagement, engagement, pre something. But there's only 6 weeks of consultation for the average Joe public to get through this. You know, the consultation, Hui Mai, was about 1.5% of the catchment of the people who would be affected by this. Do you think 6 weeks is long enough?
Yes. And so simple answer is yes. Previous consultative processes, similar with the Councillor Edge mentioned the Our Space process that we went through in 2018. I think that's ran a similar time frame in terms of the consultation period. We had a significant number of submissions from members of the public through to large developers, etc., involved in the community. So that process went well in terms of the level of engagement with the community and the level of input we had into the hearings and deliberations process on the Our Space future development strategy. So I envisage that something similar would happen here.
Wasn't a criticism, it's just, you know, an observation. There's a lot to get through in 6 weeks. Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'd like to congratulate Greater Christchurch on having a plan, because I think that's very exciting. And I want to just talk about it perhaps from a different perspective, which is a rural perspective. I'm rural. I've lived all my life in rural areas and tried to only interact with rural communities. and it's not obvious there's been any plan for Christchurch for quite a long time. I'm old enough to remember when there was a green belt, and that's now all houses. And you talk about intensification that's happening here, Jesse, but in fact it's on that wider footprint where in fact we have done a huge amount of greenfield, and your intensification is filling in all the gaps now. And I reflect on that, and I've got no issue with any of that, other than there is a double standard going on here. So next year, as a food producer, I'm about to be taxed for taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere to produce food, at the same time as the Greater Christchurch Partnership is envisaging pouring concrete over a vast area of central Canterbury. And we all know that concrete is the biggest emitter of carbon dioxide. So, you know, it seems to me that this plan, well, and it's good to have a plan, and the plan itself is not a bad plan, but just the mere fact that we're planning to turn all this area into urban development at the same time as my rural constituency is about to be taxed to try to save the planet from greenhouse gases, seems to me to be a very large double standard. And I can't help but think there's a fair bit of greenwashing going on in this whole discussion around how this new plan is going to be good for the environment and good for the planet and protecting natural environment and green blue corridors and all this stuff. When in fact the majority of this is going to be covered in concrete. And I don't see the connect between that and saving the environment, especially when I look at the terms and conditions and the rules and regulations and the taxes that we as rural people are facing in terms of trying to meet our commitments to saving the planet. So I guess that's my overarching thing. Commend you on the plan, having a plan. It'd be nice if you could stick to a plan for once. But think about the double standard that was going on here.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie, as always. Thank you, Councillor Pauling.
Kia ora koutou. Yeah, pretty big piece of work, and acknowledge all the efforts that have gone into it. Yeah, great to see it, and I enjoyed you know, learning about this, reading through it. In particular, you know, like others have mentioned, the blue-green network, the priority areas, areas to avoid, protect, the groundwater and productive soil zones, natural hazard information. Yeah, I think it's a great thing. Having been involved in processes like this in the past, I can see the efforts that have gone into it. And with my keen eyes of observation on this and my previous experience, I'm going to raise two things that I'm keen to for you to consider, and that I'll probably make a personal submission on. And I know the reason why these two places aren't on the map, I think. So one is Otu Matua, which is a special little hill just in Horsville. It wasn't on the district plan. It didn't make the district plan last time through an oversight in terms of the Naito areas of significance, but I'm going to raise that, and I'll do a submission on it. And the other one is Tarere Kotuku, which is Yas Lagoon, which isn't on the map of map 10 there, of some of the key sort of areas, as well as Ahuriri Lagoon, or the Ahuriri reserves aren't on that map either. So I'm just going to make a plug for those. But like I said, I'll follow up with my own submission on them. But yeah, really, really excited about that, as well as the mass rapid transport stuff, that transit work that we're going to see. And to sort of push back on Councillor Mackenzie a little bit, urban development has changed a little bit. It's not all about concrete anymore. There is a lot of good things that go on around spatial development, stormwater development, and ways to deal with some of those things that come off our urban development. But take the point, there is still a lot of issues with it. But the planning around how we can do it better is, you know, part of what this plan can hopefully achieve. And the last thing I'll mention is that I think, you know, I still feel like there's some work around sort of the extent of the Greater Christchurch area and the spatial planning, and where the urban limits grow out into areas of industry and land use that can cause issues. Case in point is around quarrying, etc., where issues are generated between those and some of the reverse sensitivity issues that you get on both sides. And I think that's still something that we need to sort of confront and try to deal with through the spatial plan as well. So keen to see that as we progress through it. So yeah, well done, great work, and looking forward to seeing this progress and give us a real good shape for the future. So kia ora, thank you. Kia ora. I have very little to add to what's already been said, but as a new councillor, and I guess someone who's born in Ōtautahi, lived here most of my life, apart from a period overseas. No, I didn't go to Christ College. Shirley Boys High, actually. But I just want to acknowledge the work that's gone into this too, both by the people that are here and the people that have come before it. Personally, I like the fact that it's come from genuine collaboration rather than a mandated process. I think that's something to be really admired. As a blueprint or Bible, one can expect as a basis of work going forward, there will be intergenerational interpretation of that. So that gives me hope that things can move in different directions, but at least have a course to travel. And on that, I guess all I can hope to say is I look forward to 2050 and seeing the outcome. So kia ora, thank you.
Kia ora tātou, o nei te mea, kia koutou. Tātou ko ngā kōrero here, tēnei ai. Just supporting a lot of the words that have already been said, but also just like to acknowledge from Jesse and also Councillor Edge, just the whakapapa of how we got here, and to know all the people that have played a part along the way, especially from the member of the UDS, and then of course after the earthquakes, the land use recovery plan, and then in the kind of the last two terms, then our space, and getting to where we got to with agreement between, Christchurch City Council and Waimakariri to the north and Tauranga to the south, that actually we could come together and start working together. And over that time, and especially having the apology behind me here now, that over that time actually coming together and working with mana whenua, and then making amazing progress, and especially supporting the kāinga nohoanga on Māori land, but also, which we've been pushing for a long time, kāinga nohoanga within urban areas. So that's going to be a big win, I believe, for mana whenua inside Ōtautahi, but also protects the wahitapu and wahitaonga and Ngā Wai. So amazing work. And the other thing was just seeing that the recognition, I suppose, over that time as well, the recognition of the Tiriti o Waitangi, the Ngaitahu Deed of Settlement and the Ngaitahu Claim Settlement Act, and actually showing the Papitipu Runanga, through kind of not held back by the LGA, but they actually can be partners in this process, working with TAs and also the Crown to actually show that the recognition of partnership and of their rangatiratanga status in their own rights. On that, I was probably a little bit disappointed when I saw that that there's only one mana whenua representative on the hearings panel, whereas as I've said, there's Te Ngaitua Huriri, there's Te Taumatu Runanga and Kapua Ngāti Wheke in that rohe. So it would have been good to see have actually three mana whenua to reflect the three representatives from the councils as well. I'm talking about Waimakariri, Christchurch and so on. But on that note, thank you. I'm really looking forward to the feedback and how the hearing panel goes. And ngā mihi kia koutou, kia ora.
Kia ora. Look, I think it's a great piece of work. Give you opportunity to say anything. Rich, you want to say something on it? Do you want to say, you want to make any comments?
No.
Richard, you're safe in here, Richard. You really are. What could take?
We'll take it as read. Probably easier just to go straight to questions if you'd like to, if there's any questions in terms of MRT and how it fits within the broader transport and land use plan.
I just think from my point of view, just a comment. I think that you've done really well with the MRT piece of work. I think the explanation that we had 2 meetings ago about MRT providing the corridor providing certainty for investment, and therefore starting to shape UD the way it needs to be shaped, give people the confidence to go to those areas and invest. People made the comment that high rise is not the enemy for some people. They quite like that, and they like the access to be able to use PT, public transport, like we do in other places around the world. And so for me, my comment that I made after that was, I never realised that a bus system and a a light rail system be so close in cost and operating. So that was just a real eye opener. So look forward to seeing that as we go through the process and establish what sort of modes Christchurch is going to have and what sort of connection we're going to have. Obviously, Richard, there's a huge amount of work to do to progress any of that. Once you start saying, well, this is where we're going to put it, then that's when the action starts. I know that we had a really quick and easy go through with some of the national people who are going to stand for Parliament, and they went, "Oh, you're going to do this in my backyard?" I don't know about that. But this is quite a bold piece of work, and will really do shape Christchurch for the next 300,000 or 400,000 people that we're expecting by 2050 or whenever it is. Questions of Richard or Dion?
Now I might go on the other one. I'm not very good with this whole standing orders being suspended. My brain doesn't work so well. So the MRT, with the regional rail conversation that's been going on, is this mutually exclusive? So like, if you do this, it kind of precludes the other from happening.
Maybe it might be a joint answer through you, Mr. Chair. Look, we looked at 3 scenarios for Greater Christchurch, and those were all articulated in the interim report that was made public a year or two ago. And that looked at the option that we've selected, also an option to run along the motorway corridors and heavy rail. And in terms of the 3 scenarios that we compared, the recommended option for this, and this one stacks up far better than the others, is the 22-kilometre street running, either bus rapid transit or light rail, centre running from Belfast through to Hornby, including the central city. Now, that doesn't obviate the potential for a regional rail conversation, and indeed, into the future at some stage, you could see the potential for connection to that system via heavy rail. And there also might want to be connections to other towns within the broader region as well. So these 2 can kind of coalesce in tandem. It's just that this one specifically looks at Greater Christchurch, and that will need to flow into whatever other work stream has been done in terms of regional rail as well.
Just add to that as well. So there is work happening through the Regional Transport Committee to look at investigations into passenger rail in the region. It's also part of a consideration of discussions at the South Island Regional Transport Chairs level around the movement of both passengers and freight on the rail network. We talked about regional spatial planning and transport being a big component of the regional spatial planning work. It doesn't preclude any connection, as Richard just said, into the Greater Christchurch turn up and go public transport system that we will have. There are obvious connections in places like Hornby, Riccarton, etc., where there is that opportunity potentially to connect into a intra or inter-regional passenger transport system. And population growth is a significant factor in all of making any system viable in terms of the transport network. So, and that's been an underlying premise for the Greater Christchurch transport system work that we've been doing as well. So, yeah, so no, it doesn't preclude that happening in the future. We are doing work on that.
Councillor East.
Thank you. Probably going to play the devil's advocate a little here, in that both with the spatial plan and MRT, we've been working on these plans for some years at no doubt some considerable cost. My question really is, we live in a very technologically advanced society these days. How versatile / adaptive are these plans to significant changes in technology?
Very good question, Councillor East. Through you, Mr. Chair. Look, I think as we go forward, obviously with the changes in technology, we need to consider that, and there are opportunities to review things as we go along with any plans that we ever develop. I mean, with the changes in the way we live and work and travel as well, we've seen significant shifts in technology. So, what the future might hold in terms of technological change, I'm not quite sure. We are seeing a significant shift in the transport sector as well, and what does that mean in terms of how we move people and goods around the country, around the region, around the country. So I think we need to factor those things as we go forward. I don't have a specific answer in terms of, I think we do need to be adaptable as we go forward and adjust our plans in any sense across all the work that we do in that regard. Sure if there's any further.
If I could just perhaps add in terms of the mass rapid transit, we've deliberately not sought to recommend a mode. So, you know, we're talking about a bus rapid transit or a light rail system. We haven't said whether it will be how it will be powered. So there is certainly potential to build in future technologies into the next steps of this. So I do think we have the flexibility inherent within the kind of business case process to be aware of and build into whatever we go forward with future technology. So very much so. And we certainly see, you know, things like the national ticketing system playing a significant role, both in mass rapid transit and in the wider public transport futures work stream. So that work is kind of coming to a head reasonably soon. So yeah, I think it is sufficiently flexible to address any future changes in technology for Greater Christchurch.
Right, thank you. I think what we'll do now is, if Councillor Southwood, did you want to say any more? Are you happy?
Thank you.
Just final from me is this whole thing is all about the integration of urban growth and transportation, and the two mesh together really, really well, so that you know, not one or the other.
Yeah, this is pretty cool to get us to this point in time. It's been a wee bit of angst along the way. I remember 2016 it was a bit angsty, but people have got on and done things, and we got out of that iterative process that has moved us forward, which is great. So thank you very much for that. I think big piece of work, as Leon said, but there's a bit to come in terms of where we're at with this. Now, the recommendations, there's 10 of them. The first one just notes the Whakamutunga Kaianga Committee resolutions on the 12th of May. The second one endorses a consultation occurring on the draft spatial plan. Third one receives the Greater Christchurch Housing Development Capacity Assessment. The third one receives the Greater Christchurch Business Development Capacity Assessment. And the next ones are about the consultation between 5 and 7, about the consultation process, and then 8 to 10 is about Waka Kaianga, the Whakamutunga Kaianga Committee processes also. We won't go through them. We won't go through them one by one. Thank you, John. So moved by Councillor Snuckle, seconded by Councillor Swiggs. Is there any further discussion on from Council? No, there isn't. Doesn't seem to be. So I'll put it to you. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, and that's carried. And again, thank you very much for this work, and thank you for coming along and sharing your knowledge with us. So well done, Jesse.
Through. We have 8.6 as well. Sorry.
Richard has covered that. So just have we got a mover and a seconder for those two? Thank you, Councillor Ward. Thank you, Councillor Edge. Any further discussion on that? There isn't. Councillor Swift.
Yeah, I feel like I'm always saying something, but it's the only chance we really get. But I just wanted to say, yeah, thanks for the work here, and I just want to sort of touch on again with the other stuff is this the spatial planning is really important, and I do want to make sure that we get those conflicts right. So you know, take that on board. And the other thing is that you know, with this the one that we're discussing now. I think that regional rail conversation is still really, really important. And, you know, there's a lot of people who have very strong opinions on it. But as we move into this, you know, moving on into the world, we're looking at the growth. You know, we're looking at 100,000 people coming into New Zealand this year alone. Migration is ramping up, and I don't think that's going to slow down. So it's really important to get the transport stuff right, the houses in the right spot. But I do think we need to be thinking about that regional rail in the context of this as well.
Back, Councillor Swartz. Any further discussion or any further points? If there's not, I'll put those to you. Moved by Councillor Ward, seconded by Councillor Edge. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against, that's carried. So thank you. I was premature before. No, just really good to see you. Last time in here. And then just going down the road. So well done. Thank you for that, and look forward to seeing you guys again. Yes, thank you. Right, we're up to 9. Yeah. We're up to 9. And this is the public excluded part of the meeting. Due to break at 12:30, but I think if we go through public excluded, then we're done. So that would be good. So for those people, just wait for David to leave. The recommendation going to public excluded is on pages 209, 210. That James Thompson, Regional Manager, Group Controller, Regional Emergency Management, remains after the public have been excluded. For item 9.2.3 of the public excluded agenda, she has knowledge that is relevant to that item and will assist the council. And that at 12:19, the resolution to exclude the public set out in 209 agenda be adopted. Have a mover, please. Thank you, John. Seconded by Claire. All those, and thank you for your attendance. Good to see you. So, all those in favour, please say aye. All those against, and that is carried. Okay, so we're now back in open session, and just to do the last piece of work here is the next council meeting will be held on the 24th of May at 10:30, and that's for annual plan deliberations. The next ordinary meeting of the council will be on the 21st of June at 10:30. Genevieve.
Kia tau te rangi maere. Kia runga e ngā iwi o te ao.